Well, it's 6 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order and very pleased to have a good audience this evening. Begin with the land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge that we gather on the ancestral homelands of the Coast Salish people, specifically Nooksack and Lummi tribes, who have lived in the Salish Sea Basin throughout the San Juan Islands and the North Cascades watershed from time immemorial. On behalf of everyone here, we want to express our deepest respect and gratitude for our Indigenous neighbors, the Nooksack and Lummi tribes, for their enduring care and protection of our shared lands and waterways. Next.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And next up is approval of the agenda. Nick, do we have any changes to the agenda?
Nope, it's looking good.
If not, I entertain a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Motion to approve agenda as written. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And then next is good of the order. Nick?
Yeah, I wanted to acknowledge a few appreciation days this week. It was teacher appreciation. So I just want to take some time to thank all of our teachers and also thank all the families and staff that help celebrate those folks. There's a lot of good treats and fun things going on at all of our schools all week. So happy Teacher Appreciation Day. It was also Nurse Appreciation Day this week, and I want to take a chance to acknowledge all of our nurses, Nicole, Jana, and Gabriel, for their hard work in supporting our kiddos. It's a hard job, and they're all over the district all the time. So thanks to them. Finally, we received news this week that Harmony Elementary received an award through the State School Recognition Program for 23-24 achievement, specifically in the area of growth for students in one or more racial or ethnic groups. So kudos to the Harmony staff for their hard work on student growth. That's what I have.
Good. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Next up is the consent agenda. Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent agenda. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And then public comments. Tammy, do we have anyone signed up? Yeah. Okay, first up is Helen Silphil. So you're welcome to come up here. Right.
Sure. Can I sit?
Yeah.
Yes.
That better?
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I'm going to read it because it's just easier.
That's fine.
For those of you who don't know me, the kids at the junior high call me Miss Helen. That's where I've been their secretary for the past 2 school years. I'm asking you to pause on considering the closure of the junior high office as a budget balancing option to allow for time to collaborate on other possible cost-saving measures. I could tell you that closing the junior high office will have a huge impact on the teachers that are anticipating larger class sizes due to staff cuts and an unexpected larger incoming 7th grade class. I could talk about the impact to the high school office staff by taking on the workload of an additional 270 students. Or I could talk about what would be missed without me watching the hallways all day long out of the corner of my eye while I'm doing my office work. Instead, I want to tell you about the students. That's what we should all be focusing on. That's the reason we are all here and the most important part of our job. A couple weeks ago, a student came in asking for a Band-Aid. I always ask why they need one. This quiet, shy 13-year-old pulled up her sleeve and showed me her arm. She's a cutter. I was able to alert the counselor to listen in without being seen and slowly bandaged her up, giving her a chance to talk. And boy, she started talking. This is a student we need to be aware of, and she would not have gone to the high school office. Sure, teachers can have Band-Aids in their classroom, but are they going to have time to ask why? How about the student who came in from PE not far from the office and was able to tell me she used a vape pen before she passed out? She didn't regain consciousness until hours later at the hospital. She would not have made it all the way to the high school office before she passed out, before she could tell anyone what she had taken, and for sure would not have had anyone right with her when she lost consciousness. Or the scrappy, tough girl I found hiding in the bathroom alone during class crying because she just couldn't do it anymore. We talked for a long time until she knew she would be okay. A couple months later, she came in to say she was having a hard time coping and could she sit in the office. I kept her there for one period and she was able to get through the day and she didn't have to sit alone in the bathroom stall crying. I could go on and on about the boys who show up angry, frustrated, and sometimes crying, not knowing what to do with the junior high emotions, but I'm limited on time here. Sure, going to the high school office is an option, but is that really going to happen? Probably not for seventh graders that were in elementary school months prior and now are being asked to go to the high school. Moving to junior high was a huge step for them. They're not ready for the high school environment. More importantly, we need to have a place where all junior high students feel like they can go for literally anything they need. A place easily accessible to them, a place that will meet them where they are as 12, 13, and 14-year-olds. The high school office can help with a lot of things, but it's not a match for all the needs of junior high students. There are so many more reasons why closing the junior high office will have a huge impact on Mount Baker. At a time where we are struggling with keeping enrollment numbers up, we shouldn't be giving parents any reason to withdraw their students, and closing the junior high office could run that risk. While I fully understand the need for budget cuts, please think of the direct student impact and potential liability of closing the junior high office as an option to save money. Sometimes there are more important things than a financial fix that closing one office may provide. I welcome any questions you may have. Thank you for listening to me, and more importantly, I hope you heard me.
Thank you very much. Next up is Kaylin Jewell. Thank you for coming, Kaylin.
Yeah. Guys, I'm here tonight for what I plan to be my final school board meeting as a student. Just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for helping me grow into the leader and advocate I am today. Thank you for valuing the voice of my peers and I. Thank you for protecting our trans and LGBTQIA+ students' rights. Thank you for fighting for our FFA and CTE program. And most of all, thank you for prioritizing students these past 4 years. I don't know if any of you remember my first time speaking at a meeting, but I certainly do. I was scared and shaking uncontrollably, and I'm here today as a confident public speaker who will advocate anytime I feel there's a preventable injustice. And don't get me wrong, I still get nervous talking in front of people, but that's just when I'm speaking at the state capitol, not with you guys. With that being said, I'm here for the final time to implore you to continue to get students' input. Create a school board advisory committee like Ferndale. Work with our next superintendent to connect with students. I also implore you to spend more time in classrooms. I understand and respect that this is a volunteer position and that all of you have jobs outside of the board, but spending more time in classrooms is vital for you to understand what our day-to-day reality is as students. I think it would be valuable to do surprise visits too. Don't tell schools you are coming, because I remember since I was in 6th grade, we were told to act a certain way because the superintendent and school board was coming to do a visit. Those days were always when the students would behave the best. So go see the Chaos of Kendall's behavior program, go see the extra support that Harmony Special Education Department needs, and go be a fly on the wall during our high school lunch when our counselors and one principal are tasked with making sure 465 students are staying safe, on campus, and out of trouble. I understand that we have no control over how much money Olympia decides to give us, but that doesn't mean we can't control how we respond. Finally, I want to ask the school board for 2 more things before I see you on the football field June 5th for graduation. Please spend time in classrooms in the final weeks of school. See how uncontrollable the students are when they outpower a teacher 40-1 and are counting down the days till summer. Feel how hot it gets in the 800 building when late spring hits, because we don't have the luxury of having AC like the special programs building does. But also spend time in there in January, because when it's in the teens in there, it's uncomfortably cold inside the 800 building. And second, I promise you all that if you sent a survey to students and families in the community about what they thought the pressing capital project needs of our district was, they wouldn't say the lights over the football field. I understand that is what is most cost effective for our most cost effective improvement that our district can make. But as we all know by now, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Thank you all for listening to me these past 4 years, and I wish all of you and the district the best of luck with the new superintendent and in the coming years. Also, I would like to just thank Mr. Perigo. You've been the channel in which we've gone to Olympia. You've heard students' voice, and you've brought not only my voice, but our ASB's and FFA's voice to this meeting room, which I can say hasn't been done in superintendent roles before you. So I would just like to personally thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you very much, and we really appreciate all that you've contributed to the Mount Baker community, and we will certainly miss you here at Mount Baker, but wish
Thank
the
you.
best. Thank you. Next up is Natalie Chavez. Welcome, Natalie.
Thank you. It's nice to have a seat tonight. Hello, my name is Natalie Chavez. Thank you for listening to public comments this evening. At the last meeting, I mentioned a 15-year-old girl in Tumwater who got injured in February by a large, tall, 18-year-old biological male who fell on top of her while playing in her JV basketball game. She was injured in that game. She got up with assistance and her teammate and limped off of the court. I also mentioned the website shewon.org at the last meeting. That's SHEWON.org. I hope that a few of you were able to review that site, which lists the achievements of female athletes who were displaced by biological males in female sporting events and other types of competitions expressly for females. The achievements include awards, medals, records, scholarships, and other opportunities. As you may already know, a press release came out 6 days after the last meeting on April 30th, stating that a Title IX Special Investigations Team has launched a directed investigation into the Washington State Superintendent's Office. Quote, today, the Title IX Special Investigations Team, a joint initiative of the U.S. Department of Education and the U.S. Department of Justice, launched a directed investigation into the Washington office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, OSPI. This investigation comes amid reports that OSPI has imposed requirements on school districts that potentially violate federal law, specifically Title IX, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, and the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment, PPRA. Multiple Washington state school districts have reported that OSPI is requiring school boards to adopt policies that allow males to participate in female sports and occupy female-only intimate facilities, thereby raising substantial Title IX concerns, unquote. That's all that I have for you tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Natalie. And that's all who've signed up. If anyone else who's present would like to address the board, you're welcome to. And if not, we'll go on to our next item is we are welcoming Positively Bankers. So Nikki, if you want to start that one, let's see. Actually, Troy, are you going to start the presentation then, Troy?
Yeah, I'll flip through it here. And so we got a few members of the team here with us. They're the ones with dogs.
Yeah. Oh, there's.
And then Kathy Johnson here, who helped put together the presentation. It's to present. Toward the end, we're going to split up a little bit so you can listen just to me. So yeah, again, we want to start just by thanking the board for their support. This is a program that started in 2020, and it was at the time originally designed to kind of help students with special needs, but it's branched out and is helping not only students no special needs, but staff as well. And so it's been a really powerful program. It is not just a bringing your dog to work day, and we stress that every year, but we feel the need to keep stressing it because sometimes we'll hear that this is really not a therapy program or an intervention. It's more you guys just want to hang out with your dogs. And that's actually not the case. It's harder to be here with your dog than it is without, but the power of the dogs has been such that we feel like it's worth continuing. Been featured in TV and news media, and people still reach out to us from around the state and around the country, other schools. If you Googled or if you went on YouTube 5 years ago and looked up school therapy dogs, there just wasn't a whole lot there, but I did just today, and there's so much more. I mean, it's growing across the nation, and so it's been fun to be a part of some of that for some of the schools who have reached out. So wanted to give you just kind of a quick update on who's on campus. Some of our dogs, we've already had 2 dogs retire out of the program. We've had a few dogs, newer dogs move on in. So Mr. Bowen is one of our special education teachers, and his dog Maggie comes to school once a week, and she's incredibly sweet and likes hugs. Miss Brown is one of our secretaries, the head secretary over in the main office, and her dog Bradley comes to school quite frequently and definitely does a lot to help kids who end up in the office. Often these are kids who come to us fairly dysregulated, and Bradley's able to chill them right out. You can't maybe tell from the position of the picture, but he's a little kind of a wiener dog, pretty cute. And then we have Miss Johnson. She's one of our paraeducators, and her dog Moose is recently joined the program, so he's been spending some time here. Miss Kuhn, obviously most folks know her, been around for a bit, and one of our science teachers, currently a junior high science teacher and doing a great job with that. And her dog Sadie is here quite frequently. Ms. K was one of the kind of the main progenitors of the program. She kind of helped to get this thing up into the air, and she was with going, oh, there she is. She snuck in. And so anyway, all the way since Sissy, the big black standard poodle there, who has since passed, was kind of our first unofficial therapy dog. And so helped get the program up and running. And then Miss Martin's back there as well, another one of our special education teachers. And her dog is one of maybe the biggest dogs on campus, bigger than her, I think. And, but the nicest dog, sweetest dog. Kids love Hans. And he's giant, and so it's been awesome to have in the program as well. Miss Moore, our choir teacher, has Leroy, one of the cutest corgis in Whatcom County, and brother to Chappie, who is my dog, who's since retired. She just got a little too old to do the work. The work is hard, not only for the handlers, but it's hard for the dogs. They get so much kind of human interaction that by the end of the day, they're pretty tired. So at the beginning, we had hoped to see a lot of different outcomes, and I can tell you now, 5 years in, we are seeing a lot of reduction in the amount of time kids spend outside the classroom for dysregulation if they're able to engage with a therapy dog. And it cuts it, that's a way more than in half. It just cuts it to an almost non-existent, where they step out, they can connect with the dog. A few minutes later, they're ready to go back in. Increased social interactions for some of our students with autism. Interacting with another person is hard without that kind of gateway, and that gateway often in this program is the dog. They start to talk to the dog and start to talk to us, and it's just an increased interaction. It's really important. Students with anxiety, as I mentioned, when I had a dog on campus, she would just kind of pull these kids out of the woodwork. Kids who would come up to me and say, gosh, Mr. Wright, I feel really anxious most of the time. Anxiety is a big deal for me, but I love coming to see Chappie. And then, of course, we've got more and more dogs on campus. So that's been really good. And then just some improved behavior for students on behavior plans that include the animal-assisted interventions. Again, these are students maybe who are emotionally, behaviorally disabled that just have a really hard time regulating. But as soon as you bring a dog into the mix, there's something, I say magical. I'm a big believer in science, but there's just something magical about kind of having a dog around to help those kids. Sorry, getting over a cold. So Ms. Johnson did some work talking with teachers to get some input from kids and teachers now that we've had the program going for a little bit.
Yeah, so all of our handlers kind of report back, and we have a lot of anecdotal stories, and a lot of them are very student specific. And so we didn't want to really get into student specific comments, but a lot of it is students saying, it makes me smile, it turned my day around. They are a de-stressor for me the moment I walk in the room. I just touch a dog, I get a few pets, it makes me smile, improves my focus, it's a calming effect. But this is not just stemming from our children, as we've already talked about with dealing with anxieties. It's staff. It's staff too. Bradley, that is in the office, he's there not just for our students. He shows up for staff too, and staff have commented a lot about how he's just a bright day. I just needed a pet today before I moved on to my next class or whatever it would be. This is Cheryl Kirkley here specifically. She's holding Moose when he's in my class. She and I share a classroom with our life skills program, and she says seeing Leroy, who is Miss Moore's dog, always makes her smile and makes her day better, whether she's having an easy or difficult day. And sometimes our rooms are very challenging, and other days it's just very fast paced. And when we have our breaks or our lunches, we leave. And if Moose is not there that day, she goes and finds another dog. She wants to find another dog. She gets a snuggle, she gets a reset, just like our students need to some days. And we come back and we just feel better about what we're doing and helping out. And then when the dogs can come in, Mrs. K likes to come into our life skills classes and just does a touch base. So kids are saying great stuff. The teachers are saying great stuff. At this time, we've only heard one student be very vocal about not wanting the dogs near her, and that was okay. That is an understandable experience that they've had. And in the end, she just realized that she just doesn't like dogs. She doesn't have a fear of them. She just doesn't like them. And we just respect that space and environment, and she does too. So dogs are helping students focus. These are what students are saying from doing a survey. Miss Moore did an amazing survey with some of her classes, that they're comforting, they're a de-stressor, they keep them energized to the end of the class, they are calming, they help relax. It's a non-stress feel in the room. Cool, happy, again, it's just repetitive of the content that we have. I wish we had more number data, but we do not have surveys going out and waiting for permissions to do that, or for handlers, for us to come up with a data system that handlers can enter information in within the day. So when having stressful days, seeing Leroy helps me and calms down. People seek out the dogs. Those who don't want to, they don't, and that's okay. There's countless stories where we use the dogs for de-escalation, calming bodies, or re-engagement. So I'm not going to read these off necessarily. They're available to peruse through the Zoom meeting, or we can make it available to the board members if they wish. We have a lot of students who need to be engaged in their work, and when they don't, we've used the dogs to positively re-engage them. Oh, Moose will come sit by you while you sit and read 5 sentences to me. Oh, Maverick will come and sit beside you in the chair while you do your math homework. But if you're not going to do your math homework, Maverick's going to go visit another student. And sometimes our dogs pick out students, like you were saying. They go and move in within the classroom, a confined classroom with the door shut, and move around the room. And sometimes they go and find the student that actually needs them. And you'll see students taking a test while their hand is still petting the dog. And you'll see in some of our other slides with a lot of student pictures and the dogs exactly what I mean when I say sitting in their lap while they're doing their work in the comfy chair. Another student headphones are on, but Scarlett's halfway in her lap as she's trying to work, engaging reading, engaging small groups. And I see we do have the llamas. So the llamas visit as well. They are evaluated through pet partners, just like the dogs, to be able to be on campus. And some of our kids are high stimmers. They are constantly moving and jumping and buzzing and making noises. And when the animals are around, they just, and so their countenance really changed. They have a moment to calm down and refocus on their next task or activity that maybe they don't want to do. I'll talk about the first point for updates for next year. We are working on a signage. I received a couple of $100 worth of money donated to help pay for some signage. I'm working alongside Mr. Iwasaki, who is our digital media teacher, etc., woodshop teacher, and seeing what options and sizing language needs to be finalized by our group and superintendent and the board. But basically it's going to be very simple. We just don't want dogs on campus. Reason why we don't want dogs on campus that are not approved dogs is because of sicknesses and illnesses that come upon, flea issues, parasite issues that can be transferred. We are finding feces left on our school property that aren't ours because we already have bathroom use areas and disposal plans, part of our program policy. So this signage is something we want to work into. So I'm waiting to get a couple quotes from a couple of companies and see where we can go and at least get a few signs up or one sign at every school and get more here on the secondary campus because it's a larger facility.
Yeah, otherwise, we're gonna just keep developing the program and assisting other districts as they reach out to us. It's been fun kind of networking and meeting other people and seeing their programs get up and running. And then we'd like to try to develop a crisis intervention team to assist different schools throughout the county when a crisis kind of lands on their campus. It's work that we know is really needed and really important, but we've learned from doing this program that we've got to take the time to do it the right way the first time. And the last couple of years have just been so busy, it's hard to really carve out that time. So that's kind of what we're doing in the next couple of years.
Great. Yeah, before I open up for questions, I wanted to emphasize the 3 points that you covered a bit. First of all, that all the dogs in the program are very well trained. They're very thoroughly tested, and that we don't allow dogs that are not part of the program that aren't both trained and tested. So I think that and as you mentioned and Nikki's communicated with me numerous times about the issue of dogs that aren't in the program, and I getting that message across to the public is critical, and so I appreciate the work that you've done on that public education component too.
And of course, service dogs, as Washington State allows.
Right. Yeah.
Allows on the
No,
property as they are to be. But yes, our program is very vigorous. And just because you pass a pet partners evaluation doesn't mean you fit what we're trying to do
Right.
within our program as well. So it goes beyond just pet partners evaluation. We have to have plans in place, written plans expressing how we hope to use the dog in our classrooms, what our goals are for its use in the classroom, how we slowly introduce and integrate the animal into the classrooms, checking, do we have fear levels of students in our classrooms before the dog even shows up? Having those conversations before we do that. Because if you have several students who are totally not going to be okay with it, then that's not a good fit. That doesn't mean you can't be part of our program. At this time, that dog just cannot be in your classroom. Right now, I'm in that situation. It's not an environment that is 100%. I feel confident and comfortable with my dog in the classroom, and it's not anything to do with his behavior. It's just we have a lot going on in our program, and just not enough staff to make it to keep my mind on being able to do both. I just have a lot on my plate in my position. So he doesn't come to school very often, as much as I wish he could.
So board members, questions or comments?
No?
Just had a comment that I know people that have well-trained, well-behaved dogs put a lot of time and effort into it, like hours every day. It seems like we got a lot of people that are willing to put that effort into it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a quick process either, and the money comes out of our pocket. All of our training, all of the certification, evaluations, we have to pay for, so the coverage of liability is that financial burden does come out of our pocket too, right? So this is not a cheap endeavor. So you have to be in it financially, as well as taking the time for your animals training and continued training. So training happens all the time, and we get reevaluated every 2 years.
Got a good team and a lot of support, so thank you for that.
Supporting us. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for coming, and it's always good to see our pet partners here.
Thank you.
And the great work that you do. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
So next up is a presentation from Hampton Lumber. Jessica, if you can come up. And before you get started, I wanted to mention that school revenue is a complicated beast, I guess you might say. Some of the revenue we get comes quasi-automatic. We have state apportionment revenue that is allocated by the legislature. Some of the revenue we get is a result of a public vote on our levies. Timber revenue requires both a public vote, because we only get it if we pass our levies, but we also have to fight for it. So I think recognizing that is kind of the reason why I wanted to have this presentation in the first place, because it's that important part of our revenue that is only there if we advocate for it. So if you could introduce yourselves and then go ahead.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for inviting us. I'm Jessica. I'm the outreach coordinator with Hampton Lumber. Crystal, you introduce yourself.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of the board. I'm Chris McCall. I'm Division Forester for Hampton and Darien.
Yeah, so like Russ kind of mentioned, we're here to talk to you about Hampton and our values and what we do in the community, as well as explain ways the board can advocate for itself. So just to kick things off, we are a family-owned company, 4th generation. Our headquarters are based out of Portland, Oregon. Chris and I work in the Whatcom, Skagit, and Snohomish area. I'm specific to those areas. We own 94,000 acres throughout the 3 counties, and we have mills in Darrington, Morton, and Randall. We've got 9 dimensional lumber mills total in Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia. We recently partnered with a remanufacturing and advanced wood manufacturing facility, Red Built, and Idaho Timber is another affiliate of ours. Just to give you some figures about our Darrington sawmill, this sawmill makes a really big impact on the local communities, including our Arlington and Concrete. Some annual figures from the sawmill include $16.6 million annually in direct family wage jobs, $3.9 million for local trucking businesses, and $20.2 million for local logging businesses. And this is just in Darrington alone. At our other locations, you'll see similar, if not higher numbers. It's a priority of Hampton to provide those family wage jobs, and that it has been a huge part of employee retention as well. Next slide. So this example here, this slide here is just an example of some of our local partners. I personally work with these partners often. So Pacific Education Institute, for example, this is an outdoor education program based out of Olympia. I'm currently planning a tour with them at the end of June to bring Skagit teachers out to the woods for 2 days. Teachers will get the opportunity to gain some clock hours for STEM. They're going to be able to bring back hands-on activities to their classrooms that they can teach students about modern forestry. Unfortunately, PEI recently had some budget cuts, so we won't be able to work with them for the foreseeable future, but I'm happy we at least get that one workshop at the end of June. We also work with groups like the Boys and Girls Club, Skagit Boys and Girls Club, and Arlington Boys and Girls Club, notably. I'm currently organizing a fundraiser for youth art programs in Skagit and Snohomish, and the Arlington Boys and Girls Club is generously helping with that. Conservation districts, I work closely with the Skagit Conservation District. We recently made a few sponsorships to the Mount Baker FFA. We work with Darrington and Cedar Woolley High School, chambers, economic development councils. The list goes on, really. I mean, we're all about building connections. It's really important to have those relationships in this industry. And, you know, it's not just for our benefit, it's for the benefit of the communities. We really want to see the areas that we work in thriving, Mount Baker certainly included. So here's just a kind of brief summary of the managed forest land benefits. I don't have these memorized by heart yet, so bear with me while I read from the notes. So just some of these benefits. I mean, I think that we all know that forests are great for the environment. You know, we want to keep Washington forested. So some of these more specific benefits are wildfire risk reduction. Actively managed forests are less prone to catastrophic wildfires because of strategies like thinning, fuel reduction, and creating defensible spaces. Carbon capture. This is the biggest climate benefit we have from our forests. Trees naturally absorb carbon from the atmosphere and store it in their trunks, roots, and branches. When those trees are harvested and turned into long-lasting products like lumber, the carbon remains stored, often for generations, potentially for centuries. Meanwhile, younger growing trees replanted after harvest continue to absorb carbon, creating a sustainable cycle that contributes to climate mitigation goals. Green economy support, forestry and wood products are renewable industries that provide sustainable jobs and materials. Housing and infrastructure, timber is a renewable building material essential for affordable housing and local development. And, the matter that's really important for me is land use protection, preventing these spaces from urban development. It's a big deal. And, when we're facing these housing issues that you see in all three counties, that push for urban development just gets stronger and stronger. So we really need these protected areas. And the best way of protecting them is keeping them working forests. So with that, all this work happens under some of the most stringent environmental laws in the country. I think there's an assumption in the public that, we go out and just cut willy-nilly, or it's not very heavily regulated. It couldn't be further from the truth. State landowners as well as private are mandated under these forest protection laws here. And this is just a tiny little sample of what we're regulated with. Some of these include the implementation of riparian buffers. No harvest zones are allowed near streams. This is to protect water and fish. Mandatory reforestation. Trees must be planted after harvest to ensure forest continuity. And the regulation is within 3 years, but often, at least with private industry, we are replanting within 3 months of a harvest. I mean, I was just out on a replanted site and learned that it was harvested in January and they replanted in March. I mean, it's a really quick turnaround. So you get those young trees absorbing carbon as quickly as possible. There are clear-cut limits. Clear cutting, while often misunderstood, is also strictly regulated. Clear cuts mimic natural disturbances in the area, like blowdown from windstorms, landslides, wildfires. They reduce the number of entries required on the landscape and allow for native sun-loving species like Doug fir to thrive. So the max size under the forest protection regulations for a clear cut are 120 acres. Often private managers don't even meet that acreage. It's falls somewhere between 40 and 60 acres. So the 120 max capacity size is a strict regulation, but even then, we're not going out and pushing it to the max every time. So wildlife habitat protections, this is a big one. Special rules exist for threatened and endangered species like the northern spotted owl, marbled murrelet. Climate alignment, forest practices support Washington's carbon sequestration goals. And lastly, all sales are monitored for compliance. And these rules apply to public and private landowners. So this legal framework is a way to ensure that forest management in our region is both productive and protective. I'm going to throw some data at you here. Me and Chris had a fun time looking through this. So we all know that trees absorb carbon, but there's kind of more to it. If you look at it, not all forests are the same. We kind of have this broken up into 3 categories of national forests, state and county forests, which would be, DNR, and then private forests. So you can see here that, while national forests do have the highest percentage of carbon sequestration at 25%, they also have a significant amount of carbon emitted, up to 71%, and this is annual. And the reason for that carbon emission is because these forest lands are largely unmanaged. Stands are just left to do things as nature intends. And then you compare that to state forest land, which is pretty rigorously managed. Yeah, pretty rigorously managed. You're seeing even numbers throughout for the most part. And, if you look at private industry, significantly lower amounts of carbon emitted, despite the fact that we have less carbon sequestration, we have a lot more storage capacity happening. So that management is really creating a lot of benefit in the long term with the wood products that you're seeing coming from those forests.
That's a good question about that. So mortality is forest fires?
Mortality would be forest fires, disease, or just age. So if you're like a national forest, the forests are just kind of left to grow as they will. So you can see forests up to, 120 years old. And so eventually, they almost start caving in on themselves.
Right.
So it's a variety of factors, especially in this area west of the Cascades. You're not going to see a lot of fires, luckily.
Right.
So, yeah. But I think on the east side, it would be mostly fires. And this is Whatcom County specific. So all of this information is from a really great website that I hope you all will get a chance to check out. It's from the Washington Forest Protection Association. They're an advocacy group for the timber industry. So, right here from the pie chart, you can see that only 25.2% of Whatcom's forests are working forests. The rest are completely restricted. A lot of it falls into the national park category. We live in a beautiful area with a lot of nature. A lot of that is locked up. And you see similar data here. So in national forests, we're seeing a lot more carbon emitted every year. There is a large storage capacity, but when you compare it to the storage capacity of the wood products industry, it just kind of is a great way of highlighting how this industry is a great combat for climate change and for carbon storage and sequestration. And leaving forests unmanaged creates a lot of carbon emissions.
Just to add one thing to that, Jessica, you brought up a good point about the DNR and historically how they've managed their forest lands, and frankly, they've done a great job. But the concern going forward is how will they be managed in the future? And with the new lands commissioner, with a different agenda and different designs for the forest, we're already seeing that effect, and it's alarming. You have legacy forests that now, are being, even second growth is being pushed to off limits to harvest, and you're seeing more thinnings in younger age class, small diameter trees being harvested. It's just a concern of how their management into the future will affect carbon emissions. Okay, good segue. So modern forestry, renewable materials, and thriving communities. But where does our wood come from? So specifically to Hampton and Darrington, our logs come from a variety of different sources. The first would be from our own company-owned timberlands, and roughly about 25% of the volume that comes in log farm to our sawmill is from our forests. And about a third of that is in Whatcom County, and the rest is in Snohomish and Skagit County. So a significant portion comes from Whatcom County. From our company-owned timberlands, 50% comes from private landowners. And this is typically in the form of open market purchases. So it can be from large industrial vendors that could bring us as much as 50 to 60 loads a day, to Farmer Joe, who may have 1 or 2 loads a year or less. So, we do not discriminate who delivers us logs, and every vendor is important to us. So it's roughly 50% of the volume coming to the mill. 5% comes from Forest Service. I will note that of that 5%, 0% comes from Whatcom County Forest Service. So it's coming from Skagit, Snohomish, and about 2.5% of that 5% comes from the east side of Okanagan County, Chelan County, where they have an active management program for timberlands. So there is an opportunity for Forest Service in Whatcom County to do something. The remaining 20% comes from DNR lands, and that is both west side and east side. As I mentioned earlier, this is a historical number that we get is 20%. The concern is going forward, especially in DNR Northwest region, their annual cut has been right around 110, 115 million feet a year. Last year, that dropped down to 80 million feet. And with the new lands commissioner, where's that going to be? there's been a pause of timber sales in the next 6 months of timber sales that have identified legacy trees, legacy forests, and older age classes, taking a second look at that. Hopefully they come back and come back to the auction table, but they may not. So, you know, if it drops down to 60 million feet or less, you know, that percentage that we have been successful in buying for sawmill in Darrington is also going to be less. And what does that mean? We have to lean on our other sources. So more has to maybe come from our tree farm or from private sources. So it's a big concern. Some of the local benefits of wood products manufacturing, keeping that local. Wood is grown, milled, and sold throughout the US and even throughout the world. But most of the lumber that we manufacture stays here locally in the Pacific Northwest. Our largest customers are the big box stores, Home Depot, Lowe's, but we do not discriminate on that either. Local lumber yards are a big staple of our business. We help support local jobs, local economies, and local construction. And efficiency in what we do, every piece of the log is fully utilized, whether it's making premium lumber all the way down to using low-grade byproducts in our mill. Some of the high-grade chips that we manufacture are sold to make high-grade paper, but also lesser quality byproducts, sawdust and hog fuel, are burned in our cogeneration facility. And from that, we generate power that we sell back to the grid. And we also produce steam that helps dry our lumber. By generating power and selling it back to the grid, we help our local power demands and also help keep rates low for customers in our local area. You can definitely see the effects of manufacturing leaving the area. I think Mount Baker School District definitely sees the effect of that. There are no large sawmills left in Whatcom County. Good news, Great Western is back up and running. So that's exciting to see that sawmill that temporarily went away, closed their doors, is back up and running. So that's great news, but they're not a large sawmill, and level of scale, I would assume that they have, 40-ish employees versus our 170 plus. Recreation and part-time jobs do not support a family. I would have to guess that in this local area, probably the school is the largest employer. Yeah. You see that very common in small communities like Concrete, where I live. The school is the largest employer. Where if you look back 20, 30 years ago, that was not the case. And these schools had an incredible amount of money. They had the nicest gyms, they had the nicest schools, they had the best teachers, and they could support running, these programs. And today they can't. Jobs in the forest products industry are careers. Hampton is providing permanent family wage jobs that people can be proud of. Just a quick look at what we do at Darrington. Entry-level jobs start at $23 an hour. Actually, that's even a little bit more now, probably about $25 an hour, plus full benefits of retirement, vacation, medical. Have you guys been through a modern sawmill? Yeah, it's quite a bit different than sawmills of yesteryears. So these are very high tech. And, people are at machine centers. They're not out pulling green jane. And it's a different job. And it's a job that, like I said, people can be proud to have. We have some really good apprenticeship programs, and we pay for continuing education, on-the-job training for specialized positions for millwrights, electricians, filers. As Jessica mentioned, on the forestry side, forest practice rules are the most stringent, not only in the country, but in the world. So the foresters that we have working and forest engineers out on our forests are highly qualified professionals too. They're not just basic forest, they're professionals and they have jobs that they're proud of as well. Not to mention all of the other indirect careers that come from wood products. Just follow it down the line, starting with logging. With logger here in the room, Brandon Harkness. Truck drivers, hauling, road builders, tree planters. We went through the sawmill, now it's the end user. We have lumber truck drivers, we have sales, we have stores, we have construction. I mean, just follow it all the way from the stump to the end product user. There's a lot of careers and family wage jobs that are supported through wood products. So I thought I'd give you a real quick look at a timber sale and kind of how much money is made and where the dollars come from. And this timber sale is a DNR sale. It was a lump sum timber sale sold in November of 2021. The name of it was Flywheel. Had a minimum bid of $764,000. We were the only bidder on it. We bid $804,652. So then about $40,000 over minimum bid. That is just the direct money that went to the DNR. So of that, they divided up, and I could not get a straight answer. You guys may know that exactly how much you received for that. So I'd be curious to hear that amount.
Yeah, so of the 800, so the if it's state forest, the DNR keeps 25%. Then of the remaining 75%, depending on which school district it's located in, somewhere on the order of a third of the remainder goes to the local school district.
Yeah, so I called the DNR and asked them for the specific dollar amount, and they couldn't tell me. So I did some backwards math.
They are now for as of last year, they're publishing for each timber sale at minimum bid the amount for each junior taxing district. Okay. So going forward, you'll be able to get some really good information. I think they kind of changed their program and working a lot harder in that.
Good to know.
Something we've been discussing for a while, and I like their current program. So.
Yeah, that's good. Well, since this sold in November of 2021, calendar year comes in play in fiscal year, but my math shows that Mount Baker School District received about $143,000 from this timber sale, which is great, but it's not enough. I mean, somebody could say $143,000. Well, that's a lot of money, but it really is, especially to support a school. And what is that? A teacher's salary with benefits, loaded cost of a teacher. So that's one teacher. So to follow it down the line, there's a lot of other local benefits that are indirectly associated with this timber sale. And those total up to $1.7 million. Some of those are from logging on this timber sale. $607,000 we paid for logging. And this was to local contractors. Nielsen Brothers did the shovel logging on it. Zender and McNeely did tower logging. We had timber cutters, Frank Kane, who cut on it. And we had local dump truck drivers hauling rock. Local truck drivers of, the Zenders, Tom Zender, and Bill Zender. The local contractors of the log line, I said $394,000 went towards this. Road building and road maintenance, $281,000. Road use fees for our fees on a timber sale. $78,000, B&O and excise taxes to state, $19,000. Mill wages that we would pay on, I forgot to mention, this sale was 89 acres and 3 million board feet. So our sawmill wages to manufacture lumber on 3 million board feet of logs was $352,000. So you total all this up and this $1.7 million. That's a lot of money, but as I mentioned earlier, that still doesn't add up all of the down the line from once it leaves the mill. But you still have trucking to get it to the lumber yard. We have the sales. We have all of the construction and all of the end users. So I'm sure it's more than double that. So where did all the logs go off this timber sale? Most of them went to us in Darrington. That's hemlock and Doug fir. But we did have some oversized logs going to Busey. Some went to Great Western. Cedar went to Alta Forest Products all the way down Shelton. Hardwood, there's no hardwood mills left in this region. So it has to go across the pond, Port Angeles Hardwoods. And we also did some cedar salvage, a local company, T Wood Recovery out of Bow. If you add up all the lumber generated from 3 million board feet, it's enough timber to produce lumber to frame an estimated 460 single family homes. So think about that. 460 homes, it's a lot. Another note about this timber sale, I'm sure you guys know where North Fork Road is and Racehorse Main Line. So this is way up on top, high recreation area, outskirts of Bellingham, so it gets a lot of traffic. We did an incredible amount of road maintenance and road improvement, which the general public was very happy to see. The North Fork Road is just littered with potholes, and until somebody comes in and does some harvesting. What's the first thing you do? Road improvement, so the log trucks can use that road, but also a benefit to other users too. We also installed a 45-foot modular steel bridge to access other areas and also for fish passage. Currently, the Racehorse Main Line is closed. And why is that? Guess what? Another slide happened, but the DNR does not have money to fix the slide. So there it sits. We have a road that's closed because the DNR doesn't have money. How can the DNR not have money when they have all of this resource? They're land poor. They have an incredible renewable resource to help support roads and maintenance and paying for helping support schools. And I just can't say enough how much we appreciate you guys supporting our industry and understanding the benefits of wood products and what they can bring to the community.
So the next few are a couple of my slides. Some of you have seen these before. So this is just kind of set the scene of multi-age within state forest. Do the next one. And then how the state forest came about when the previous landowners walked away from their land and it reverted to county ownership. We have the DNR currently manages almost 30,000 acres in Mount Baker School District in that category, of which we're the largest local beneficiary, Mount Baker School District. Next one. Next one. Trust responsibility. This is very important, as and I'm hoping that all of us are educated in this and not just myself. And the DNR is operating under the laws of a trust that apply to a trustee of a trust. So it's the U.S. Forest Service has multiple use and is not a trust in the way that the DNR is. They're very different legally, but the DNR has specific duties to the trustee that are etched in law, and so these duties are legally required to carry out. Do the next one. So I think I got a slide after this. So we've received up to $1.5 million a year in state forest revenue. Let's take a look at the next slide. Yeah, this is one. So if you can read the top part, you can see from 2015, 2016, we we received 1.5 million then. It went up to about 1.8 million in a few years later, even as high as 1.9 million. And then you see at the top, though, the 107,000, that's the result of Whatcom County Council's requested pause. That I've addressed that several times. And I was able to convince the council, we met together, as a result of a discussion, they stopped asking for pauses, and about the same time they stopped asking for pauses, we got a new land commissioner who instituted a 6-month pause in all the older forests. So if you look down below, so we've averaged over the last before the pauses, we averaged $100,000 a month in state forest revenue in Mount Bakersfield District. That's our March figure, at the very bottom, $308.10. So I spent the last 2 days with the Board of Natural Resources on their annual field tour, and I was able to communicate that to each member of the Board of Natural Resources, except for Chris Reckdahl, who did not attend, unfortunately, our own state superintendent of public instruction, but working to get that back up to the 100,000 level is the goal. Now, to address the concern, I do think I've had 4 meetings with the new land commissioner since he was elected, and I think he's starting to get the idea that they can't run the department with what he had intended to do. So I'm a bit hopeful that yeah, I think that realization is starting to sink in. So the proof will be in the pudding, but my estimation is we'll start seeing those pause sales work in maybe 2 per month for the next, there's 30 pause sales, so it would take a little over a year. But that's what I'm getting from the DNR now. So, and anyway, keep working with that. And then to go with what you were mentioning, Jessica, but this slide is, the blue is off limits to harvest. You can see it very visually. The very on the right side, that green is national forest, and then the other is a mixture of state and private timberland. But it shows you just visually how much of the DNR managed land is protected for either riparian areas, steep slopes, or endangered species. So it's about half of the land base in Western Washington. Go ahead.
So you guys have really gotten a lot of information here, but I would really like to highlight the main reason that we're here, and that's just to kind of help spur some initiation for, advocacy within the board and within the school district. If we stay quiet, there really is no hope, I would say. It's kind of one of those things where, you can arm yourself with a lot of information, but if you're not active with it, it really it doesn't do any good. So I am the outreach coordinator for Hampton, and my position is really to help people engage with their concerns around timber sales and pauses, and even when things get canceled. So one way of doing that is just by things like this, like presenting to you, giving you the information so you have it in your back pocket. Myself and Chris, we are always available to you as a resource if you have questions about anything. I'm certainly not a content expert, but I know many content experts that I can refer you to. Chris is the same. Chris is definitely a content expert. So that's just a small piece of that outreach portion of my position. Another way, twist right here. So the DNR timber program, I mean, this is where all of the timber sales are happening for state lands. This is important for us, but it's also important for the school district, as you can see from, you know, Russ's slides and Chris's slides. So engaging with the Board of Natural Resources as much as you can. They hold public comments. It's based on a lottery system now, so it's a little more tough to get in. But sending letters, written testimony, I'm more than happy to help build those if you're interested. Meeting with other local officials, your city council members, mayors, anyone who is in a leadership role, they need to hear from beneficiaries like the Mount Baker School District. So just being vocal about your concerns. And I find that, you know, the more information you have when going to those officials, the better. So I'm more than happy to provide plenty of resources. My favorite thing to do is work with local businesses and organizations. I love taking people out in the woods and out to the mill in Darrington. If you haven't been out to the sawmill, this is an invitation now. It's a really interesting experience, and they're currently going through upgrades for energy efficiency and safety. But like Chris said, there's a lot of technology involved. It's a really interesting process to go through and see how everything's done. I have a lot of events coming up this year where I take folks out to the forest. One event is in partnership with Genuine Skagit Valley, and we're going to take folks out to a shellfish bed and a production farm, and then we're going to take them out to Hampton Land, and you're going to learn all about the natural resource industry. And so if any of you are interested in attending that, please let me know. We'll have a locally curated lunch. It'll be a great event, not as deep of a dive as this, but it'll be kind of more informal. And there's plenty more opportunities. We could come to classrooms. I could bring a forester or someone from the mill so students can engage with us. Lots of learning opportunity, lots of engagement opportunity. So really just extending us as a resource to you. And that's it. Thank you so much for having us. And that's my contact information and Chris's contact information. And it's been a real pleasure presenting to you all today.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So board members, questions or comments?
A lot.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate it. I mean, I like thinking about the processes and getting more into it. Like, it's not just that taking all the trees, and that there's like all these other things that benefit from it. And so I think putting that out there a little bit more and letting people know, focusing on that is definitely something that'll be helpful. And then I think the impact to the school, right now, that's definitely the biggest thing that I think people will be appreciative of. So.
Yeah, I think exposing young people is really important as well. I think that especially with, you know, everything climate related now, it all feels like an emergency. Mm-hmm. So giving young people an opportunity to just kind of see things from behind the curtain of, like, you know, especially as a private industry, you know, we're not going out there and cutting down all the trees and then just like, whatever.
Right.
There's a lot more to it, and we really, really care about the woods, and we really want to see them healthy and thriving. And so I really like working with young people and kind of giving them a glimpse into that. I've had some really interesting, weird questions also from kids. Yeah.
They're wild.
Yeah.
And I really liked the graphic with the 3 different versions of
The
carbon
capture, yeah.
emitting, because you know, I hear all the stuff about carbon sequestration, and I mean, you know.
Yeah, we forget that wood
There's a lot
products
about
also
that, too.
store the carbon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they don't say that very often.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys hit all the things I was hoping here, the environmental benefits. I think there's a case to be made that message doesn't get out enough.
Mhm.
So that's important, the benefits to the community for jobs and industry is important. You guys are doing a good job, you know, with your mill and creating good jobs as well. So that's good. And you said 1/3 of your business is in Whatcom County. Did I understand that?
Of our timberlands, about a third of our acreage. Yeah.
Okay, good. And, you know, I know people are interested in things that they can do to help advocate for timber sales, for all the benefits you mentioned. it feels like we're kind of up against some pretty powerful forces, working against that. So, thanks for sharing some of the ideas. May get some more follow-ups on that and things that people can do to stay involved with that. So.
Yeah.
Like Jessica said, the Board of Natural Resources meeting, which are every month in Olympia, has a great platform for you guys. Because honestly, every month they get tired of hearing from him, Sierra Pacific. And I mean, we call a spade, but people check out him when they know what Hampton's going to say. But if the board members go down there, or teachers or students, and the students say, we've received $308.10 this year.
This month.
Or,
That was one.
Oh, this month. Okay. This month. Oh,
It's not that.
Well, $7,341.77 this year. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a pretty powerful message.
Yes.
You know, of timber dollars you're counting on as a beneficiary.
Yeah, exactly.
And to hear that from, students, teachers, board members versus us, it's different.
Yeah, it's, if I don't gamble, but if I did, my chances of winning the state lottery about the same. I put my name in every month for the Board of Natural Resources lottery, and I haven't had any
Yeah, they've got to have.
good
you
luck
flag
since they've had the lottery program, but
Yeah.
but I didn't, but it was beneficial to have the
Yeah,
Board of
absolutely. And
Natural
writing
Resources
letters
tour.
and really like working with the Whatcom County Council, I mean, that's so important. They're a huge influence.
Yeah. No, I think for us, it's Whatcom County Council.
Yeah.
As well as the county executive, though the county executive, I think, understands our issues probably a bit better than the county. I've had to work harder with the council, but I think that hearing from more people, and particularly the county council, because they've been the ones that instituted the pause that caused that huge decline in our revenue. And so I think, and they could do it again. And so I think just that, as you engage with county council members, express that importance and it's, I think they do, at some level they do understand, but then they have a tendency to forget it because they're hearing from other constituents more than they hear from us. And so that's important.
Well, thank you so much.
So, and the other major purchaser here is Sierra Pacific Industries, and they also are about the same, because they're about 25% of their wood supply depends on DNR timber sales. So they're very similar to Hampton. And so having that program both for the business side and for the school district revenue side, we kind of, our interests align, they go hand in hand. Thank you so much. And I was part of this, the reason in talking with you about putting this presentation together, I think that your presentation is so well done that you can use it for other groups.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I really, I want to applaud the work that you put into that.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Russell, see Derek was here. Did they get a chance to meet Derek?
What's that?
Did they get a chance to meet Derek? Like the request?
Oh. Which?
Derek is here.
Oh, okay, yeah. I wanted to connect you with Derek.
Oh, great. Yeah.
From, he's in with people that are a program with the very nice to say that.
Oh, yeah. You want
Okay, so next up is board comments. I'll start with you.
I think I'm first this time. I'm looking over at Jason. I attended the Books and Breakfast
earlier this week at Harmony Elementary where they bring in or have members of the community, parents, grandparents come in and start the day with students by reading to them one-on-one. And just something to sort of support that early literacy with our young people. And we've had donation from a local business owner, Avenue Bread, I believe, that provided some of that breakfast for the community members while they're sitting and reading to kids. And it's always really fun to see in the classrooms and all of that happy but youthful energy. I also wanted to call out, we went quickly over our consent agenda, but there was a lot of really good work buried in there. Of securing grant dollars to improve the school. And I just wanted to highlight that and show my appreciation for that, including, and I don't know that it was a grant, it was state legislation, capital project funds that helping replace the flooring in the Acme Annex to the tune of $60-some thousand. That we got to help do that work, that is not coming from our budget. I mean, there's just a lot of really good work that was going on there. So thank you to our staff for all that behind the scenes work that we don't necessarily see happening, to bring that funding in and help keep those projects going. And then I also wanted to comment on Common Threads. And Bridget's not here tonight, but thank you to her for that partnership with them. I see that the OSPI grant that's been funding that is not going to continue in the future. And it's both a board member and a parent. And then my other hat as an educator, I have seen a lot of wonderful benefits of that program with my own kids, bringing home food recipes and learning to work on garden and plant seeds and harvest. And I don't know what the future will hold for that partnership with Matt Baker, but I would like to thank Common Threads for their work with us in making that happen for all the years that I've had.
Yeah, and unfortunately, actually, because of the changes in federal funding and the current pause of the AmeriCorps program, Common Threads has stopped all operations actually effective immediately. So they're no longer operating right now while they wait to figure out next funding sources because of the pause of the AmeriCorps program. Yep. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you to them for all of the years of work and service to our young people, and to our staff for their hard work to bring in that money to support our schools. That's money for this.
Cool. A couple things in the consent agenda that caught my attention. One was the Mount Baker Academy, because last week Nick had mentioned that is an opportunity for us potentially to help grow our enrollment. And I'm hoping we can take some time to hear more about that. Sounds like they have a teacher, an administrator, secretary, maybe.
The program secretary, and they have a teacher, and it is supervised by Bridget Rossman. So I don't know what percentage of her time is dedicated to it. It's not a lot. And just some quick facts. The FTE received for those students is about 90% of other student FTE. And so we have about 26, 27 students in there right now. So it's about 90% funding for those number of students. So it's a big benefit, not only to those families that feel that better supports their needs, but it's also a benefit to the district because it is a spot where we can grow that enrollment. Something I was talking to Brenna about this earlier today, and it's so important, we'll be able to identify those students and those families who choose to homeschool that aren't accessing that program, because we feel we can support them with their endeavors, but also it's a benefit to the district too.
Yeah. So hopefully we can have them come in and talk about, see how well supported they are. I know we're at budget cuts right now, but if we can invest in a program that helps improve enrollment, then that should be something that we should look at, right? And I know we had 2 teachers before we had to cut because of budget cuts, and I don't want to circle back to that.
Yeah, we actually have a plan in place that as enrollment increases, we build that teacher back in.
Okay.
Yep, so it's like in increments of 6. So once they get to 36, we'll start bringing that teacher back 1 day a week. And she's agreed to do that, so, yeah,
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
so, yeah.
The other one that caught my attention was the highly capable program. I know we talk about that once a year, but again, that's another program that we don't really talk about that we could. Doesn't seem like we put a high percentage of our money into that, but it might be something, again, that is worth looking at in terms of promoting it to help draw people into the school district, help build up our credibility. You know, we have this great program for highly capable kids, and that we're a place that people with highly capable students may want to enroll their students. So that's it.
It seems like forever ago, but we did the CTE visit. And that was really great to see pigs and Northfork just sponsored a pig, so that's exciting.
Oh,
we have a
great.
couple that we do every year, so happy for those kids. I think we learned a lot about the visit. It was a good one. And let's see, the play is on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at 7 p.m. They're doing Clue, which is I saw Nooksack Valley did that a year or two ago, and it's really funny. And highly entertaining. So I would recommend people try to get out and see that. I mean, I don't know that our kids will be as funny, but I'm sure it's entirely possible. So there's that. That's it.
The plant sale was last weekend. That went really well. Sandy, we walked through it on the CTE program and it was full and a lot going on. Miss Davis and the kids and students and helpers really worked their tails off in there for that weekend on that, and that's very good. That one seemed to go pretty well. There's a few things left over, so that was good. And one thing for other people to look at and read, Nick shared it. April 30th, Seattle Times article, they wrote it. It says, lawmakers, you did not make significant investments in Washington schools. And it's a pretty long article, but it really explains a lot of what they didn't do and what they chose to do. So for people read that, it shows a lot of the problems, why we're facing what we are in some ways. So just throw that out there. That's a good one to look at.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, if anybody wants to email me, I'll get you the article because we do hear from folks in Olympia that they were proud of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But the article is written by the head of Washington State Association of Administrators, and he makes it clear they shouldn't be proud of themselves. So.
Yeah, so the legislative session did end on time. We did get one, and you may touch on that again, but the one thing that we did get that's of significant benefit to my Baker School District is an increase in funding in special ed. And I think we're talking about 650 or 700,000. We'll get the final figures from OSBI fairly soon.
Yeah.
But that's, at one point during the legislative session, I was not expecting much more than the 50 or 60,000 for materials and supplies. So, I mean, when you get 20% of what you think what you deserve, you say thank you, even though you didn't get the other 80%. And it's I think the struggle to get the legislature to fund basic education is frustrating, I guess you might say. But and I did continue meeting. I really appreciate our Mount Baker students meeting with our legislators, not just down in Olympia, but in other opportunities, and inviting legislators out to visit students here. Critical in getting that message across, and I think those meetings were significant in terms of even getting the special ed funding we did get, because I think at some point it looked like we weren't even going to get that. So And I did, one of the members of the Board of Natural Resources is Jim Cahill, who's the governor's budget director. And so I had a really nice conversations with him during the Board of Natural Resources field trip. And it's expressing how important that special ed funding is, and still, I don't want the governor to line item veto it. So trying to get that message across, get it back to the governor's office. So that's kind of where we're at with that. I think in addition, like I say, in addition to the increase in special ed funding, the materials and supplies and other costs we got, I think we're thinking about $50,000 to $60,000, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go over that a little bit in my superintendent's report, but that would be our enrollment state study.
Yeah, and which is roughly about 10% of what our additional costs are.
Right.
And those are all basic ed costs. So that kind of shows it. As I mentioned before, I was able to get across to the Board of Natural Resources members, and I spoke a lot with senior DNR administrative staff, and I think we're about the impact of the 6-month pause. And I do, as I mentioned, I think they will phase those timber sales back in by and large. The legislature doesn't have, if the state were to buy out that much timber, it would be, the estimates that I've heard are somewhere around $2 billion for timber that would otherwise be making money for, as we saw in the program, not just the money that we received, but all the rest of the money. So I don't think there isn't the money at the state level to buy it out, nor is there the reason. So I think I think that the commissioner made a lot of promises in the campaign that he then realized can't keep. One thing that I do find that's a good sign, he kept all of the DNR operational staff, and so I think that's they know what the finances are, and so I think we'll slowly get out of that 6-month moratorium.
Those jobs need to be paid for somehow.
Well, yeah, and I think, I didn't ask him outright, but I suspect that the commissioner did not know that the staff's salaries came out of the timber sales. You find that out, and then you realize, I got 2,000 employees here. What do I do? So anyway, so I think I'm feeling certainly more positive than I was a few months ago about that. But the proof will be in the pudding. But it's an ongoing discussion. The U.S. Forest Service. So this is long ago. Some Dean remembers back when the U.S. Bob, you remember when the U.S. Forest Service was providing money for schools. Yeah. So we received 25% of the revenue from the U.S. Forest Service timber sale. And that program ended before Cleveland was born, and so you've never heard of it, but it had been a big moneymaker for Mount Baker, and it could be again. There's some interest in the current administration to resume that, but I don't. The implementation is going to be the challenge. the Forest Service no longer has any personnel who can implement it. I've been having conversations with American Forest Resource Council, who's working region-wide to with the Forest Service to try to get implementing a timber sale program again. And I've been promoting a longer term contracts of 10 to 20-year period contracts, which is possible under the law, and that way you don't just get it started and then the next administration stop it again. So that's kind of the direction. But I feel somewhat positive that the chief of the Forest Service, nationwide is Tom Schultz, who used to be head of the Department of Lands of Idaho. So he understands the issues here in the Northwest, and if anybody can get it going, good. But I'm only partially hopeful, but it's something that we're going to keep working on, because if it does work, then we start receiving revenue from that program in addition to DNR. And there's plenty of logs of timber available. It's just a question of if they can get all of meet the regulatory requirements and all the other aspects of it. So, but it's a long shot, but it's worth working on. So that's all I had. So next we're board action items, and we have 5 policies. Take them one by one. We'll start with Mount Baker policy 3414, infectious diseases. Want to address that one, Nick?
Of course. This is just a couple small changes to an existing policy that changes a couple phrases to refer to documents as those have been updated. So uses the word infection instead of disease. It refers to infectious disease control guide for school staff, and which is managed by the Department of Health, not OSPI, which is why OSPI has been removed. Those are the changes.
So any questions there?
Not a question. Wasn't that long ago, we had schools closed, right, for COVID. So just curious what the criteria would be for closing a school.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be determined by the Department of Health, which I think is potentially why that change came to the Department of Health as opposed to OSPI, to make sure that those decisions lie with healthcare professionals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other? This is one that I thought we could approve for first and final reading, if that's an entertaining motion to that effect.
Motion to approve policy 3414, first and final reading.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next is Mount Baker policy 3424, opioid related overdose reverse.
Yep, this is referring to naloxone, or its more commonly commercial name, Narcan. It's changing that originally when this policy was first instituted, it was for high schools only. They found that they wanted to have it in all schools in the event that it's needed. We already do have it in all schools, and we have multiple staff trained on it. So this requires at least one staff member, but there's a large group of, I think, almost all of our staff are trained on it, and everyone knows that it's in all the AED boxes. So there's a couple key changes here, but we've been in compliance with these changes for the last couple of years.
And this is changed to state law.
Yep,
That's
yeah,
motivating the policy change. Yeah.
that's right.
Questions, comments?
I did have one comment.
Yeah.
I think it's paragraph 3. The word high before school is not removed like it is in paragraph 2. To be congruent
Got it.
with that change in the law. And that was my only comment.
I had a comment too. So as we vote on, I wrote it out, but as we vote on the policy 3424 to stock Narcan in our high schools, I wanted to address how we got here. The opioid crisis was ignited by companies like Purdue Pharma, who falsely marketed OxyContin as a safe and non-addictive, claims that were debunked in court. They hooked millions on prescription opioids, paving the way for illegal markets to flood our communities with deadly drugs like fentanyl, exploiting that addiction. Hundreds of thousands have died, millions of families have been shattered, and our community is still reeling. FDA officials who approved these drugs even took high-paying jobs with those companies, deepening public mistrust in institutions and medical experts. This history explains why many in our community hesitate to trust new vaccinations or other medical recommendations. They've seen the damage of broken promises. Approving this policy is vital to save lives, but we must also educate Mount Baker about how legal drugs sparked this crisis and illegal markets worsened it. Let's commit to transparency and community education to rebuild trust and validate the skepticism people feel. That's it.
Yeah, other comments?
Mine was just the same as Danielle. It's in the first paragraph, it says reversal medication doses in each of its high schools, and then subsequently high school is taken out, or high is taken out.
Yeah.
So is it all schools? Or
It
is
is.
just
Both,
Yeah, so
schools?
if yeah, there's a couple spots where high will need to be removed.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. You know, I agree, Ed, where the increase in the problem came from and the impact that fentanyl has made. And, you know, fentanyl is in just about every illegal drug because it's so cheap. And you know, my time with the fire department, I've been involved in saving people's lives with Narcan, and you got to use it right then. You got to have it there, and so it's an unfortunate necessity, but I do think this is a good, and it is not just high school. Little children can get exposed to it just accidentally, because it takes such a tiny amount. It could be a residue on some clothing or something. So I think that the policy just kind of reflects the reality. This is one I was going to also suggest for first and final reading, if there's not.
With the note of the.
Yeah.
Yes.
With that change.
Minor editing.
Yeah. So I entertain a motion to that effect.
Motion to approve policy 3422 with changes first and final reading.
3424.
3424. I think you said 3422. That's what I said.
Second.
I have 3424.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Next up is Mount Baker Policy 5005, Employment Volunteer Disclosures, Certification Requirements, Assurances, and Approval.
Yep. So it clearly delineates the concept of a supervised person and an unsupervised person. So I'll try to give a couple of examples on how we regulate those pieces. So the lowest level that doesn't take any kind of background clearance is going to be a visitor. It's a parent who attends a sporting event and a parent who attends a concert at a school or books some breakfast. They're a visitor in the school. There's no requirement for kind of any background clearance. The next level beyond that is going to be a volunteer, which is a parent who consistently accesses the school, maybe will serve as a chaperone on a field trip where they will have time with a student that is unsupervised by a staff member. To meet those requirements of a volunteer, you fill out a background check through the Washington State Patrol, and Angie runs those background checks. And if there's any issue, then they're for my review and I make a decision one way or another. Beyond that, we have folks who are hired coaches or hired employees, and those are all required to go through a more thorough fingerprint background check. And this just delineates the concept of definition of unsupervised access to children and that kind of stuff. And that's, again, this is one of those updates that Mount Baker's already been implementing those safeguards before this language changed.
Any questions?
So someone had out of state, moved here from out of state. I assume that the fingerprint would apply to that, but maybe not the volunteer.
Even as far as whether or not state patrol will catch it.
Yeah, if they had trouble acting.
Yeah, the state patrol has been able to, they still pull out of state stuff.
Okay,
It's just a matter of like how quickly things turn around and how thorough they are.
right.
Yep. Yeah, we've had stuff come back from out of state.
And what about for the volunteer position? Look at
Oh, yeah, that's the volunteer who fills out state patrol background check.
that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the fingerprints are even more thorough.
So what about board members?
That's funny. I know.
I did as a volunteer.
As bring up those surprise visits that someone mentioned, make sure you're with someone because you are a visitor. You're not a volunteer at that point.
Yeah, right. We're not unsupervised.
Correct. Yeah, you're not unsupervised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else? It's another one I was gonna, solicit for first and final reading, a motion.
Motion to approve policy 5005, first and final reading.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Next up is Mount Baker policy 5400, personnel leaves.
Yeah, this was an update from a policy that was passed during the governor's emergency proclamation and vaccine mandate. So since that has expired, the policy needs to be reverted back to its original form, which is what this does.
Any questions on this one?
I was curious about unpaid leaves, like how is it? Do we have many of those, and how do we be fair and who gets that?
Yeah, it's a good question. We don't have a lot of it. Those, I have to be careful. When it occurs, it will sometimes occur with greater frequency with a certain individual or two. Sometimes it occurs through something catastrophic they have no control over, that they want to take unpaid leave for, a death or a birth. But all unpaid leave does appear on the consent agenda under personnel action, which is a practice that we've gotten away from in the last few years as far as the short-term unpaid leave. But now I've asked that those unpaid leaves go on that agenda as well, to make sure you are still aware of its frequency.
Good practice, and also I don't know if that the collective bargaining agreement informs that policy at all, but obviously we want to be compliant with that.
Yeah, I think some of the steps that I would encourage the next bargaining process to take is how that impacts evaluation of an employee as far as consistency or frequency of access to unpaid leave if it's not a catastrophic event.
Mhm.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a spot for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions? The other one, I would recommend first and final reading.
Motion to approve policy 5400, first and final reading.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Last up, we have Mount Baker policy 6600, transportation.
Yeah, so there's a couple updates here. Again, this is an existing policy that already exists, just with some changes. Something important to know is that it's talking about the reimbursement of transportation of students based on walkable routes versus non-walkable routes. And school districts work with the local law enforcement to determine walkable routes and non-walkable routes. So we work pretty closely with the sheriff's office over as long as I've been here, that no Mount Baker student has a walkable route to school. And so therefore, if we were to drive a student from, a block away here, we still get reimbursed because there's no sidewalk. And so every student that's picked up in Mount Baker is a reimbursable student. And so I think that's what this is getting at is just kind of making sure that's codified and yeah. And I did check, Brenna had a question about the authorization of students to be able to use a vehicle that is not a bus, which change it from the superintendent designee, which is what we have been doing. For example, if we have a student who's McKinney-Vento and lives in Blaine, we've been using a Honda Odyssey to drive them. But now that switches to the board to approve that. So I will have to look into, like, if it's a yearly thing, like we just have you guys, we present that, hey, we're gonna use a non-school bus, which also is important to note there too, that all of our non-school buses are still tested by the state patrol. So they have to pass the state patrol inspection every year. So I'll have to look into how we do that approval process with you guys.
But was that an actual change that needed to be made?
That's the WASA suggested it was changed, yeah. I'm wondering if it's to ensure there's some good transparency to try to keep a rogue superintendent in line, I guess. I don't know.
Okay.
Perhaps. I mean, because there's definitely some legal ramifications if the superintendent's choosing a random vehicle to
Right,
let a kid ride in.
okay.
But I don't know. I know, I agree, because quite often it's almost always superintendent designee.
Yeah.
So,
One thing that caught my eye was the school bus trespassing.
Yeah.
Okay, I missed that before, or
so that's all new.
is that a problem? Like what prompted that?
It came from the state, so I think it came from perhaps some elevated behavior of students that they had a hard time, removing from a bus.
Huh. I thought it was more like random people getting on the bus. or
No.
adults, or I didn't know what was going on like with that.
Yeah.
No.
Well,
I think we would hear about that a
Yeah,
little more.
well, I think in some places there are times where some upset parents have entered a bus.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So perhaps this was getting at that, I guess.
Will this impact us much in terms of?
Not that, no. No.
It might be that because it does say risk of harm to passengers or driver, so that might be referring to that.
Yeah.
Any further questions? So also recommend first and final reading for this one.
Motion to approve policy 6600, first and final reading. Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next up, Nick, superintendent's report.
Yeah, so as we mentioned a couple times tonight, the legislative session has ended. And we'll remain respectful as possible but also just share some things that I've thought about as we've wrapped the legislative session and kind of what Jason was bringing up earlier with Joel on his letter to the editor. Because, even though there was perhaps a marginal investment in education, I think it's something that we need to remind ourselves that it was based on a budget that was developed a lot of new revenue that is not proven revenue. If it's revenue that's created off of increases to taxes, there's a likelihood that people don't live here anymore, and then those taxes aren't actual real revenues. So as I read some things that maybe are positive, I just want to make sure that lens is there, that this revenue is not real because the anticipated revenue is not proven, I guess is what I'm saying, because I would have preferred that they built a budget off of other reductions instead of increased revenues. But that said, here's some things that hopefully we can celebrate. Potential change to the transfer. I will also acknowledge that the budget has not been signed by the governor, but that he does maintain line item veto, which is that's different by each state. So these are assuming that no vetoes from the governor. A change to the transportation vehicle fund, where we will be able to use the money in that TDF account to buy a vehicle that is not a school bus, which is a good sign for us, as we look at the shortage of bus drivers and we look at the need for support vehicles when we're taking students to Pullman for FFA. It's far easier to use vans instead of school buses. It's far cheaper to do that when we have a shortage. So historically, those support vehicles have been purchased out of the general fund, which, as we know, we want to use our general fund in the classroom for teachers and paras and supporting students. So to be able to use TDF funds for that is a positive for us. Any questions about that? I broke it down to TDF, capital, and then operating. Any questions about that change at all? Okay. Capital budget highlights about $660,000 for the school-based health clinic, which was Again, that was not an ask from us directly, that was an ask from the State Association of School-Based Health Clinics. But the 670 was dedicated to work for work to occur here at Mount Baker. And then $237,000 from the Distressed School Fund for Acme to replace the carpet and flooring in the annex. It was becoming a safety issue. And also that's the 60,000 part. The leftover is to place a portable that is sitting in storage that the foundation has been poured for, and will create more space at Acme. So that was a special thanks to Senator Shoemake on her visit last year. We were able to, she toured the annex, she looked at the foundation without building, and she was able to help us secure those funds for that one. Any questions about the capital budget highlights? Okay. Again, these are some operating budget highlights that we anticipate. The national board bonus for teachers was maintained. So for Mount Baker, that's about $309,000 that will pass through from the state to the teachers. The cap was removed for special education. That means an increase for Mount Baker between $700,000 and $800,000. To acknowledge though that this year we're projected to spend $1.1 million over the allotment. So it is helpful and we will take it. But we still have needs students with needs that are more significant than we're even receiving adequate funding for, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. And the point that Russ made earlier about MSOCs, if we did receive $50,000, our increase to insurance was $86,000. So that was wiped away pretty quick. And then with our conservative budget or conservative student enrollment approach for next year, because we're projecting another decline in enrollment, that increase actually, if you compare what we budgeted for this year and what we budgeted for next year, MSOCs will increase about $6,000 because we are predicting fewer students next year, because everything is based on that model, which that is one part of the legislation that came out that is hopefully helpful. They've directed OSPI to start working on a different funding model because that concept of per student funding isn't working. So that's what I have for an update from the end of the legislative session.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions on that? I think, as far as the looking forward and your comments on revenue, state revenue looking forward are well made. My conversations with Jim Cahill, he is very nervous. He's the one who's got to make the numbers match. Yeah. And very nervous about the impact of the tariffs on, Washington is the most trade dependent state in the nation. And Boeing is already now scrambling to find new buyers for 50 airplanes that were scheduled to go to China and now aren't going there. So that's a major impact there. And then increase or reduction in goods available in the stores. Also, we're a sales tax dependent state. So if the retail sales go down, then our sales tax goes down. So, and I could get that sense in talking with him, and it's just, it kind of keeps him up at night, which, so we're not out of the woods on the state budget, definitely. So yeah. It's going to be an ongoing concern. But thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Meeting schedule, as I mentioned, the July 9th board retreat.
Also, Tammy and I just established the date today for the retirement reception. We were going to make it, we'd like to have it on board meeting days for convenience, but the next board meeting is too close, and the board meeting after that is the last day of school. So people usually like to come to reception on the last day of school. So we're gonna make it June 10th. From 3:30 to 5. Not required to go, obviously, but if
What was the
they're
date?
June 10th, 3:30 to 5, for the retirement celebration. And if we have, just please let Tammy know if you intend to go so that we can do a public meeting if there's more than 2 of you.
And the July 9th, school board retreat, what's the timing?
9 to 2.
2.
And then Terry, do you have the graduation info ready
As far as,
for the board, timing?
I have not received that from the high school, but I will check in with.
Yeah, if you could just send us an email when you get a chance.
We know it's June 5th. Yeah.
And then also, from the high school, I know there's the FFA awards banquet, I think is 21st of this month. And then the additional, seniors awards and those, if we could get kind of from the high school consolidated, schedule of those dates, would be nice to get as an email. So, any other items?
Nope.
If not, we're adjourned, and we'll just stick around to sign. Thank you very much.
That was cute, I'm regenerating the school board meeting.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not.